Welcome back to the Pick 199 podcast, episode 52.
Hey. What's up?
What's D?
Hey.
And this week we have special guest and jockey Blaike McDougall. How you doing, Blake?
Yeah, good fellas. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Hand over to Snako and he's going to run the interview.
I'm the master interviewer extraordinaire. That's why.
Said no one ever.
Yeah. I'm going to call myself Carl Stefanovic then for a second. But he wishes. So Blake, local jockey, killing it in the country racing at the minute. Just coming off the 2020-21 Jockey Championship. It's a pretty massive achievement, mate.
It was a big season. Something that was sort of worked towards the last few years. I had a bit of a back to front apprenticeship. Obviously, a lot of apprentices sort of come through their apprenticeship flying, ride a lot of winners, and sort of have a big apprenticeship. And then when they become a senior, they quieten down. Whereas I had a stop-start apprenticeship and still rode a few winners in town. But it wasn't until I finished my apprenticeship and moved away that I really put things together. And it just goes to show I've been a fully fledged jockey now for the last 3 years. I think so. 3 years ago, I think I rode 108 winners, and then the year before I rode 140, lost the premiership through suspension, and then last year I rode 196 and claimed back the premiership and a lot of other minor premierships along the way.
Yeah, very good. Mate, I loved your apprenticeship because you made me a heap of money one year at the Soldier Saddle. So
yeah,
that was fantastic. Mate, going back, like you're a local boy from the area. Grew up, spent a lot of time in Portland. Don't remember you spending a lot of time around horses, but
no, funny that I used to chase them on motorbikes and had never had an interest. Never had an interest. I obviously, grew up the early part of my years in Portland and then sort of early teenage years in Wallerawang. But I obviously grew up a little bit different, had a bit of a different upbringing, and I never really knew what I wanted to do for quite a while, and I didn't have much going on. So I think it was a matter of a few people coming together and having a bit of a word to me and trying to point me in the right direction. And I think I actually forget his name, but our librarian at Portland Central, he was the mayor of Lithgow. What was his name? Neville
Castle.
Neville Castle. He started this whole thing. Yeah. He we're doing work experience one year, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Nothing." I said, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm just happy just doing what I'm doing." And he said, "Oh, I was so light. I think I just sort of finished up playing footy. I was like 45 kilos getting smashed around. Coach ended up saying to me, I can't keep putting you on." And there wasn't a lot going on for me at the time. And he sort of pulled me aside and he said, "If I can tee up some work experience at Randwick with Ron Quinton, would you go and do it for me?" And I said, spoke to me father and that at the time. And, it was a bit of a holiday for me as well. So I went down there, worked with the horses for a couple of weeks, got an idea of how everything worked, and I come home and I didn't like it. I didn't get back down there for another sort of 12 months, but I think it was just a matter of there's not a lot of opportunity up our way. I was probably knocking around with the wrong crowd, and it was a bit of and like I've said in a lot of articles over the years, it was a bit of a get out this job. Like, I could move to Sydney at the age of 16, be put in a house, be fed, get paid, and work with horses, which was very new to me. So, it was a bit of it was an opportunity.
Blake, do you feel like the stigma around being a jockey affected you starting earlier?
I reckon, it's funny. Like, I moved away when I was 16. I had nothing, and I moved straight to Sydney. And it took a long time for me to start riding, obviously, because I couldn't ride. So I worked as a stable hand picking shit up for 18 months on $280 a week, and which, yeah, and I was just getting used by a few trainers down there. It wasn't until, I had sort of a lot of the littler trainers that only had a handful in work. They sort of helped me ride the pony and sort of get going and learn how to ride, and sort of fast track another 6 months. I was doing my trials, and then the boss I was with, Con Karakasanis, he actually just got suspended for tubing a horse, or getting caught tubing a horse. So then my papers, we call them papers, your apprenticeship, got transferred to a trainer called David Payne at Rosehill, and he was great early. He was great early. He just put me on. Like, I'd barely ridden gallops on the grass before I went to him. I was doing trials, and before I knew it, I had my ticket to ride in races, and I wasn't ready. And I only rode for about 8 months. I had a bit of trouble. I rode 10 winners in my first sort of 8 months of riding. But I just think I was probably about 18 then, nearly 19, and I'd moved away at such a young age and worked so hard for this goal, this new goal that I wanted to do. And by the time it all come around, I wasn't getting much of a go at the time, and I needed a holiday. A lot of people said I should have went on holiday, but I didn't listen to anyone, and I ended up burning out. I ended up burning a lot of bridges, and ended up going back home to Portland and moved back into my nan's house. And I guess I caught up on everything I missed out on as a kid. I caught up with my old mates, and I got back into that routine of just, doing what we do at that age. And it wasn't probably until moving back there at sort of 19, and then staying there for a few years, it's sort of for reality to come and hit me again, and sort of get back out of that area and get back into Sydney and finish what I started.
When did you sort of know that?
Beautiful, mate.
When did you sort of know, like, you could make a real hot go of being a professional jockey?
Well, it's an opportunist sport. Like, it's an industry you can just walk straight into. You don't need any qualifications. There's no sign up paper. If you just, it's a very practical job. There's no theory at all, really. The only theory is doing your form before the races. It's very hands on. So it's just we call it a bug. You get a bug. It's a racing bug. You fall in love with the animal. It's crazy. Like, I just can't stop. I just go. Like, the last few years, I've just gone and gone. I've travelled all around Australia. I've been very lucky over the last few years. I've done most carnivals. I went up to Queensland for the first time last year. I rode in the Stradbroke. I do Tassie every year. It's a great carnival. I did Adelaide. I rode in the Group 1 South Australian Derby. We live in our own world. Like, we get so caught up in because we start very early, and there's races every day. We have our own community. It's like we're living in a different sort of. It's weird. It's hard to explain.
So is it like the thrill of racing against other jockeys, or is it you might get a win here or there, and it sort of builds on top of that? Like, you get onto a roll of like a couple of wins or something, or a couple of places, and from there you just sort of you're in that the bug, like you said, like you catch it and you're just like, let's just keep going, let's do it.
Even before the race riding, it's just something about getting up at that time in the morning, working with these animals. It's an amazing job. Like I said, I travel Australia every day. Every single day I wake up and I go a different direction. I'm going to a different suburb, a different town, different track. I'm riding different horses, different people. It's just, it's like I said, it's like we live in our own little world. Like, it's just, you just get so caught up in it. And then obviously, like I said, early doors, my apprenticeship was up and down, stop started. I'd ridden three winners on a Saturday, one day at Randwick, as an apprentice. And then the next week I didn't get a ride. I spent a lot of my apprenticeship suspended, not for anything sort of serious, just careless riding and just stuff like that. So I missed out on a lot of opportunities, and I wasn't as mature then as I am now. I sort of never really could be told what to do. So I was always a little bit above myself, I'd say, throughout my apprenticeship in Sydney. And and I didn't have a lot of people around me either. I feel like I was always on my own. I feel like if I had a bit of a mentor or someone there to sort of pull me in line every now and again, whereas I was sort of just young and and when I was riding in town, riding a few winners, I was sort of, I wouldn't say I got a big head, but I run my own race, put it that way.
Like, how much prep work, mate, would you sort of put in before the races? I think sort of mentally and physically, it could be quite demanding.
Mentally, it's insane, the pressure that we get put under. Like, you think we could have 8 races in a day. Like, we've got to worry about. So you ride a race, you get ready for a race, you ride a race, and that race is over, and then straight away you're thinking about the next race. You can't even, like, it's insane. And when you're riding in the country, that's why I think I enjoyed it so much the last few years, moving to the country, and I reckon I just blossomed because I just had this relief off my back. When you're riding in town, you're riding for big stakes, you're riding for big owners, and as soon as you do something wrong, you get it. All of a sudden, you get caught wide on a horse for Chris Waller. All of a sudden, oh, he's riding bad. That kid, can't put him on. And then racing, it's like as soon as someone starts saying something, it gets spread around. So it's, the pressure mentally is insane. Physically, it's we're not really. I don't think we're classified as athletes, but like our recoveries is horrific. Like, we don't. Footballers, they get massaged, they get fed, you're allowed to hydrate before you play. Like, for us, we're the complete opposite. We're no fluids, we're sweating, we're wasting, we're not eating. We're riding track work at 3 o'clock in the morning, then we're going home, having a sweat, losing another kilo or two, then you're getting in the car and you're driving to the races, and then you're there all day, and then you've got to deal with the pressure of the race, and it's insane. Like, it's people, a lot of people don't understand. There should be more spoken about it, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all agree that you definitely are athletes, mate. And I don't think it's the amount of pressure that you guys are on and the amount of physical toll that it takes on you as well. Like, that can't be understated. And there's got to be more put into sort of helping the next generation of jockeys that come up to be able to sort out with that stuff. Because I'm sure that you would have loved to have, as you said, a mentor, but also have someone to help you with recovery and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, Victoria, Racing Victoria, I think is so far in front of any other state. They have an actual apprentice school. They select 5 to 6 jockeys every year, and they get nurtured, they get looked after, they get made sure they get given every chance to fulfill their apprenticeship. Whereas, sort of nothing against New South Wales, but if you want to be an apprentice jockey in New South Wales, you just sign a bit of paper and you're there, you're an apprentice, and you're left on your own. Like, unless you know somebody, racing's big for who you know. It's not what you know so much. It's sort of who you know. So you get a long way. You get a long way in this game if you got someone on your side, and ability wise is what separates us from good jockeys and bad jockeys. But there are a lot of jockeys that have been handed a lot throughout their career and why they are doing what they're doing. But speaking of pressure, that is what separates us is how we all as individuals handle the pressure. Like Hugh Bowman, like, I don't know if there would probably only be a few jockeys come to mind who could handle the pressure of riding Winks like that. That's just, it's insane. Like, he's only just starting to come back right now. I was having a conversation with him on the flight back from Queensland when we rode into Stradbroke, and he was saying to me, like, he just feels like he's getting his straps now, and like it's been years since the Winks race. But that's mentally, like he probably missed out on a good 12 months after her, and he had to take a big break because it was just amazing. Like, and if you do follow Hugh and you're watching him, like, he is only just hitting his straps now, and it's been probably over 2 years.
Jeez, wow.
And like, when at the end of that Winks run too, like, there was a lot of chat about him and if he was still right to ride Winks, and that he might have been going a little bit easier on her and stuff. And it's like, how many wins did they have? Like, he dominated. Like, that partnership was so good, and he was still under pressure.
Yeah, you're right. And he still, he still won big races in between. whilst he was riding her. So it just goes to show he's one of a kind. Obviously, I'm a massive JMac fan. I think he's the best jockey I've ever seen. But they're two different style of riders. Huey's very old school. He's a horseman. He rides full foot. He rides a lot of feel. With JMac, he's a freak. I've never seen anything like James McDougall. He's something. Yeah, he's a freak.
Do you think a lot of
Who's the best jockey you've ever raced against?
Well, I've ridden against in Australia. I've ridden against them all. I've competed. I've beat them in races. I'm a big believer. Like I always say, we can all do a similar job. It's about being on the right stock. If you're on the right stock, like every single week in, week out, JMac and Huey get put on the best horses from Waller's, from O'Shea's, from Godolphins, and they get the job done. Like it's just how it works. Like there was a conversation a few months ago in the jockeys room. Someone was saying about Chris Waller talking about James, and they go, "Oh, something come up about James giving one a bad ride," and Chris Waller said James never gives him a bad ride. Sometimes he gets unlucky, but he's the only jockey Chris will say that about. Anyone else, you get caught wide or you missed a kick, or fucking was the jockey. But if it's James, he always says, "Oh, he was just unlucky."
So for yourself, Blake, like where you're at the minute, you're dominating. Sorry, Corey, you go.
No, you're right. You're halfway through now.
Sorry. So where you're at the minute, Blake, with like your country riding and you're dominating this field, you've beaten all those blokes. Where are the steps at to get you to like racing in a Melbourne Cup, for example? I know that could be crazy far ahead, but
no, I've actually started the process. So 6 weeks ago, I made the move to Melbourne. I just felt like Melbourne. I just had a good vibe about it. I've always come down over the last few years and had some success, and I've built up some good relationships with some big trainers down here. So, like I said, I spent the last 3 years riding around the country, getting a lot of confidence and sort of just shaping my craft, I'd say. And I was pretty happy doing what I was doing, but I have a lot of people sort of in my corner now. I've got a mentor, I've got a really good manager, and these people have helped me along the way and are pushing me for more now. And I'm not the most positive person. I never have been. It's probably been one of my downfalls is mentally. But I feel as I'm getting older now, I'm a bit more mature, and I'm just, I understand things a bit better, and I have to dissect things, and because if I had a bad day at the races, I'd carry it for 2 days. I'd be fucking depressed and fucking, I'd be, sucking and rah. But now, if I have a bad day at the races, I talk to my mentor and we dissect the day, and it's all about getting home in a good mindset and not sort of, having stuff in your head. So, like I had a conversation with my partner. I have a girlfriend. You have 2 young kids and a life set up in Albury, but with people around me, mentor, manager, we've all decided that we're going to give Victoria a go. So we've moved down. We just got a place for lease for 12 months in Essendon. Yep. And I'm riding work on a Tuesday for Peter Moody, Pakenham. Thursdays, I'm just starting to do like Ballarat, Warrnambool. Fridays I do Flemington. Saturdays I do Cranbourne. Fridays I do for like Ben and JD Hayes. And Saturdays I'm riding for like Trent Busseltons and Natalie Young. And I'd been going to Moody's for the last 4 weeks now, and he's just thrown me a bone. So on Saturday at Caulfield, he's given me a ride on a really nice horse in a Group 2. He's called Oxley Road. He's got 53, so I'm going to have to lose a couple of kilos by the end of the week. But, this is what I've come here for, these opportunities. I think a few weeks ago, I rode in the Moya, which is a Group 1 at Moonee Valley. We run 4th, run out of its skin. But, run 4th in a Group 1, like it's not something I can say I've done over the last few years. So the opportunities are here and they're coming. It's just a matter of sort of working hard, and that's what I'm riding a lot of work for big trainers, and I'm not a natural lightweight, but I'm the lightest I've ever been because I have something to look forward to. So as long as I can keep my weight down, because you get a lot of opportunities if you can ride light in town. A lot of the bigger jockeys, they don't really like riding under 55, under 56.
Very good.
No, excellent.
So you've talked about like the mental side of things, like from when you're an apprentice. Like now that you've got a mentor and a manager, like has it just become that much easier for your mental side of things to sort of unload when you have a shit day on the track sort of thing? Like you can bounce ideas off each other sort of thing. Like it's just that like a release of pressure that sort of come with it, or
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing I put it to is just maturity. I've grown up a lot. You know, when I was a few years ago, I'd have a bad day at the races, and I'd just be filthy. I'd come home and pick a fight with my girlfriend for no reason, and just I'd be shitty for days. Like, you know, I got 2 young girls now, and at the time I only had 1 young girl, and like I should have been coming home and been a happy dad, but I was always sort of, I don't know, I just sort of got stuck in this rut. It was not good mentally, and I didn't know if I was depressed because I never seeked help. But the more I look back on it now, the more I talk about it, I was probably, for a lot of years, I was in a really shit headspace. So, but I think moving away from the city and making a family and sort of just continually growing up and just having the right sort of people around you. I've had my new manager now for 2 years. He's more than a manager, and I don't pay him for as much as what I should. I only pay him to do his job, but he does a lot more than just sort out my rides. He's almost like not a father figure, but he's an old head on shoulders. He's been there and done it, and he's always good to bounce stuff off. And I've now recently had a mentor now for the last probably 12 months, and he's been great. He was an ex-jockey, so he understands. But because you can go to the races, have a bad day, trainer will give you a spray, owners won't be happy with you. Your mind's going 27 different ways. So, and then you've got to get in the car, you've got to come home so then you've got to get out of that bubble. It's like you're getting back out of that bubble, go back into the real world, come home. Or even like, there's been days where, like, if I have a day off, like, I don't even want to go down to the shops. Like, I don't want to go into the grocery store. I don't want to go walking down the street. I don't want, people will be looking at me, and mentally it's quite challenging at times.
And off the back of that, like, how do you build like a relationship or like an understanding of like the horses that you're riding? Like, do you just have to trust your craft, or is it like also building something with the animal that you're riding?
Definitely. Obviously, for a country jockey like myself, it's sort of just get on and fucking then go. Like you obviously, I rode most days, and like I said, every day is a different day. You're riding different horses for different trainers, but if you're riding in a similar area, you generally get to know. Like if you're riding for a lot for 1 or 2 trainers, you sort of get to know one trainer. All their horses will be similar. Obviously because of the way they train them. So every horse is different. I try and explain to people that are not horsey people. Horses are quite similar to humans. They're individuals. They've all got different personalities. They all, fillies are different to mares, and geldings, old geldings are different to young geldings, and colts are different altogether. Like they're all, you've got to be a lot calmer, and, you've got to approach fillies differently and mares, whereas colts, you've got to be a little bit more, not stand over them, but you've got to be a little bit more, because I'll just take the piss of you. You got to. It's just something over years that that's your craft. That's what you shape. You got to sort of work the horse out, and you don't have long to do it. As soon as you get on it, you're already working it out. And as soon as you get on a horse, you can feel them, and they can feel you. They're amazing animals.
So you talked before about having like these long seasons of like 150 plus sort of races. Is like how long does a season usually last for you guys?
Yeah, so last season I had 980 rides. So a season is 12 months. We go August to August. And the stupid thing about racing is that's it. It's August to August. So 1st of August is the start of the season, and the 31st of August is the end. There's no break. There's no holiday. There's no, if you want to take a holiday, we're taking it out of our own time. We don't stop. In Hong Kong, I think they race 9 months. I think they have 3 months off. But Hong Kong racing, but yeah, Australia, it's retarded. It just doesn't stop. And you're just expected to keep being there, showing up. Because if you're not, the bloke behind you, he did the same job.
Yeah. Mm.
So yeah, our season is 12
What
months.
was it like? Flat out, that's a big year. Blake, just going back a little bit, your first winner, you rode it for David Payne. What was the feeling like of just achieving that goal? Like,
yeah, it was amazing.
Final line?
It was amazing. My first ride was for David at Hawkesbury on a horse called Lemon Sweet, and I was 4 deep the trip, no cover, fucking looked like an idiot. Tried to hit it down the straight, nearly fell off it. Got pulled into the steward's room. Got a big talking to. David didn't talk to me for 2 days. He was pretty hard. He was a hard taskmaster, David, and he was probably a big part to me pulling the pin the first time and going home, because he was South African and he was a very old school hard taskmaster. He was obviously brought up in South Africa, very tough, and he was ended up just being too much for me. I couldn't handle it in the end. But yeah, my fast track from having my first ride, I think it was maybe 2 months later, I went to Scone. I didn't have a car. Probably didn't have a license, to be honest, but I remember I rode track whip that morning at Rose Hill, 3 o'clock, and I hopped in the horse float with the horse. They're not very enjoyable rides. They smell of piss and shit and very loud. I was in the back sleeping on my race bag. To Scone, it was it's 3.5 in the car, so it would have took us 4 hours in the float there. So I started at 3, got in the float, fucking all the way to Scone, had one ride, and it was just, I remember the horse. His name was Simitro. It was a beautiful, beautiful horse. I drew a good barrier. He just jumped, travelled. I box seated, I'm pretty sure, and it's just he just travelled so well for me. I didn't know at the time, but he was always going to win the way he was travelling, and he sort of, from memory, he pulled out top of the straight and he just fucked off. I didn't even have to do much on him. I was trying to do stuff on him, but he was just a sit and steer. It was just amazing. And I just remember crossing the line. It was just relief. But it was just, it's hard to explain, but it was just, I think, I was obviously very happy and just a lot of relief. And same thing, doesn't last long. As soon as you pull up, come back to scale, you get off, you weigh in, it's all over, next race. So, but for me at the time, from memory, like it was a long time ago, it was an amazing feeling. And I do recall ringing David that afternoon, and he for some reason he wasn't happy. He was just like that. He never ever give me a praise. I wrote a lot of winners for him at the provincial level as well. But yeah, he was a funny man, David.
Touching back on when you were talking about the suspensions, like you sort of mentioned quickly, like it was just possibly taking the wrong line. What was what are the main sort of ones that you can get suspended for? Is it is it a build up of things over time that gets you suspended, or is it?
Yeah, so you get a record, and the stewards work off a template. So the template could be for whip. So if you go over in the whip and then you get suspended, you'll get warned. You'll get what they call a reprimand. And then if you go over the whip again, you'll get another reprimand, and then you'll get a fine. And then once you get a few fines, then you start getting suspended. And like riding, so if you're in a race, say if I've drawn barrier 12 and I'm trying to come across to lead, and someone, the rule is you have to give another runner 2 lengths to cross them. So 2 horses space and then cross. We never give each other 2 lengths. It's just 2 lengths is it's ridiculous. We normally length and a half is about what we give each other, but when you're riding with decent riders, you can give them a bit shorter, and they don't sort of. You can learn to sort of let people go. Whereas when you're riding in the country, or when you're riding against someone who's probably a bit scared, as soon as they see you coming, if they stand up and pull their head and check the horse, then you're going to get time, and then you get suspended. And then once you start getting suspended, like I said, it goes on your record. And then when you have a few suspensions, you get longer and longer. And when I was an apprentice, I went a lot for the whip. I'd always, if I thought I could win the race and my horse was responding, I just wouldn't bash it, but I would go over what I was meant to get the job done. That was my mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So and half of my trouble was the whip, and the second half was careless riding. Like if I was box seat and I was smoking, I didn't care who was outside me. I'd just smash them out of the way. If I thought I could win, I was coming out, and that's you can't really do that. Or you can, but there's a fine line. But I didn't care. I just crossed someone a length. Like I've put a jockey on the deck before. I didn't mean it, but that was just my mentality years and years ago when I was younger. And I just had that from just sort of how I grew up. Just kept that sort of silly mentality. And carried it through the early part of my apprenticeship.
Do you think part of that was just like that sort of chip on your shoulder to sort of prove that you could be a proper professional rider? Like
nah, because that would be, going at it, looking at it in a professional way. I was not professional. I was young and I was just silly. I just used to just do what I wanted to do. I didn't have much respect at all. For looking back on it now, I didn't have much respect at all for the stewards or for the fellow riders. Like I was just young and just sort of just doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, very good. So what's the next step for you? Like, where do you want to end up in like a year, 2 years sort of thing? What's a big goal?
Well, I'm going to spend 12 months in Victoria. Hopefully I can crack it in Victoria. It's a bit tough at the moment. Obviously they're carnival down here, so it's I'm not riding in town as much, but it's only a few weeks left and then it'll be back to normal. And so hopefully I can just be a regular on a Saturday in town in Victoria. Hopefully I can be having 3 or 4 rides and, riding the winner every now and again in town. Like the objective is to not so much work less, but not work as like in New South Wales. I was travelling around the countryside, whereas Victoria it's a lot smaller. It's less travelling, and if you can ride in town, you're riding less, and you're making equivalent or more money. So just to live this different lifestyle, just have a crack at being a Melbourne jockey, and hopefully, using my skills to ride in town instead of around the country where I have been the last few years.
Awesome. I think you're definitely an inspiration to all those kids especially those kids that don't know what they want to do. And we're seeing a lot more kids that don't know what they do. Do you think going into jockeying as thinking it's not really a profession that you wanted to do sort of helped you mature in the long run a bit quicker?
Oh, for sure. Like when I moved down, I was 16 and I was sort of running around, Rose Hill, Parramatta. It's a bit different than hanging around the main street of Portland. I was hanging around the main street of Parramatta. It broadens your mind, and the world's Australia. Like it's a massive place. It's a lot bigger than just where we grew up. There's a lot of people that just get stuck in a rut, just live there their whole life and just grow up there and just float around. But I always try and say to people, like, the world's a massive place. Get out, travel, go and explore. It's limitless. Like your life, like what you want to do with it. There's no boundaries. Like you are the only person who controls it. No one can choose your future or what you want to do as a profession. You can do anyone can do anything they want to do. It's just up to you whether you whether mentally you can allow yourself to do it.
Hey, that's one of the best things I've ever heard anyone say. Personally, it's a top message for so many people to hear. I'm just as someone that knows you, to see where you've come from and see where you're at. Super proud of your effort, mate. Absolutely tremendous. Especially to get away from some undesirable people like Luke Barnes and those kind of that rough crowd, because he's a nutcase, that bloke.
Yeah.
To get away, mate. What you've done, what you've accomplished, it's a tremendous effort.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Before you go, I'd hate to end it on a really good note. Parramatta, mate, where are they going wrong?
I don't know. I think every year we just keep getting better and better at the moment. I think we were pretty stiff this year. We obviously would have killed for a hooker in our last game. We obviously lost Reedy mid-season, and that probably cost us against the Panthers. Although they had a lot of chances to score, they didn't. But if you look at the game, the poor bloke, fucking Ray Stone, he knocked it on 27 times, and Junior Paulo was playing out a hooker in the last play, and that's the difference. So look, I think we're a work in progress. Yeah. We're always going to be a work in progress. I can't seem to work out what we lack. It's just when we seem to have everything sorted out and we're going well, something happens. So I think personally, I love Brad Arthur as a coach, but I reckon he's a bit too soft. I reckon he's a bit soft on them boys, and I reckon
it seems like the motivation's the issue, because you guys win the big games, but then struggle against the lower end teams.
Yeah, it's just fucking mind-boggling. But you look at coaches like Craig Bellamy. He's hard and tough, and Wayne Bennett. And you look at Wayne Bennett, he's a different coach, but he's real well respected. Like, I think the boys take the piss out of Brad a bit. I reckon he's a bit soft on him.
Mate, you should hit bells up while you're down there. Two Portland boys tearing Melbourne apart.
Yeah, it'd be good to bump into him. He wouldn't know who the fuck I am, but I'll be making sure if I ever did see him, I'll be telling him where I'm from. I don't know if I find it a bit. I don't know where to say I'm from. Like, I could say I'm from Portland, but I feel like I spent most of my years in Willowing, to be honest.
Mate, don't tell anyone that.
Portland early days, but
mate.
I reckon I had most of my fun growing up in Willowing anyway.
Mate, as someone that's got a mother from Portland and a dad from Willowing, I'm from Portland.
Yeah, well, my mother's from the Central Coast. She's from the Central Coast.
Maybe go with that then. Go with that.
No, I'm Portland Willowing proud. Oh, don't worry about that.
That's it, mate. Very good, Blake. Thanks so much for coming on, mate. Truly appreciate it. It's a great message. And can't thank you enough.
No worries, boys. Happy to help out.
Thanks, Blake.
See you, boys. Bye.